The war had been raging for years. Earth's defenders, scattered across the galaxy, fought desperately against an alien empire that had no equal in strength or technology. Despite their best efforts, humanity was losing. Every battle, every defense, seemed like a small victory in an ocean of defeat. No one expected anything but a long, painful struggle to survive. The protagonist, a young soldier named Mark, stood at the edge of the hangar bay, staring out into the endless void of space. His mind was a blur, filled with thoughts of home, of the family he would never see again if things went wrong. The mission he was about to embark on was dangerous, deadly even, but he had no choice. Earth needed him, his people needed him, and there was no turning back. Mark, a voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to see Captain Reynolds, his commanding officer, standing behind him, her expression serious. "Get ready. The battle begins. In an hour." He nodded and tried to shake off the nerves that were building in his stomach. He wasn't afraid of dying. Not anymore. He had seen too much to be afraid of death. But the thought of failing, of not being able to protect the people he cared about, that was something he couldn't bear. "Yes, sir," Mark replied, straightening up. The captain gave him a sharp nod and walked away, leaving him to prepare for the fight of his life. The battle ahead was supposed to be their last stand, a final effort to push back the alien invaders and stop them from annihilating Earth. The aliens had already taken control of most of the galaxy, their massive ships and advanced technology overwhelming every defense humanity had put up. If they didn't win this battle, it would be the end. As Mark suited up in his armor and checked his weapons, he couldn't help but think of the strange encounter he had earlier that day. It was something he couldn't explain, something that had shaken him more than he cared to admit. He had been walking through the corridors of the ship when he had noticed her. She stood alone, her back to him, staring out a large window at the stars. The glow of the ship's lights made her look almost otherworldly, like she didn't belong in the same universe as everyone else. She was tall, with long, flowing dark hair, and she wore a suit of shimmering armor that seemed to shimmer in the light. Her presence was powerful, almost magnetic, as if she commanded the very air around her. Mark had stopped in his tracks, unsure of what to do. He was about to turn away when she spoke. "You're about to face death, aren't you?" she said, her voice calm, almost as if she were asking about the weather. Mark's heart skipped a beat. How did she know? He opened his mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. He was a soldier, trained to face anything, but standing in front of this mysterious woman, he felt like a child. Instead of answering, he stepped forward. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She turned to face him, and he saw her eyes for the first time. They were deep, almost black, with a strange intensity that made him feel like she could see right through him. Her lips curled into a small smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Elira," she said simply, as if that was enough. "I'm sorry for what's to come." Mark frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" She stepped closer to him, her armor clinking, softly with each movement. Her presence was overwhelming, and for the first time Mark felt small. She reached up and cupped his face with her gloved hands, her touch cold, but strangely comforting. For a moment time seemed to slow, and all he could focus on was her. This alien woman who had somehow captivated him in a way he couldn't explain. And then, before he could react, she kissed him. It was unlike anything he had ever felt. The kiss was intense, passionate, and it burned him, as if her very essence was seeping into his skin. His heart raced, his body alive with an energy he couldn't control. He closed his eyes, caught up in the feeling of it, but when he pulled away, it was as if the air had turned colder. Her eyes were full of sorrow, and her lips trembled slightly as she whispered, "Forgive me for what I'll do after." The word sent a chill down his spine, and for a moment Mark didn't know how to react. He wanted to ask her what she meant, but she had already turned away, disappearing into the shadows of the ship's corridors. The kiss haunted him in the hours that followed. He couldn't stop thinking about it, about her. Who was she? What did she mean by her words? And why did he feel like there was something more to her than just an alien warrior? The answer, he soon realized, would come on. The battlefield in the coldness of space. The warships lined up in formation, ready to face off against the enemy. Mark stood at his station, his fingers gripping the controls, his eyes focused on the view screen in front of him. The battle was about to begin. All units, prepare for engagement. Captain Reynolds's voice crackled over the intercom. This is it. Do or die. We fight for Earth, for humanity. Mark didn't respond. His thoughts were elsewhere, his mind still consumed by the mysterious Elira and the kiss that had burned him like fire. It was a strange feeling, one he couldn't quite place. He had kissed women before, but this was different. He couldn't deny the connection he felt, even though he knew it was impossible. She was the enemy, after all. The battle began, with a deafening roar as the alien ships descended upon them. The sky was filled with explosions and laser fire, and Mark's senses were immediately overwhelmed by the chaos. His training kicked in, and he fought with everything he had, dodging enemy fire and returning fire in kind. But through it all, his thoughts kept drifting back to her. Elira. What was she? What did she want from him? And most of all, what did her kiss mean? The silence was broken only by the hum of the ship's engines as Mark sat in his fighter cockpit, preparing for what would be the fiercest battle of his life. His fingers moved automatically over the controls, checking the status of his weapons and shields. The moment had come. Earth's last hope rested in their hands. They had to win, or humanity would be no more. Mark's mind was still reeling from his encounter with Elira. Her kiss had left him confused, lost in a whirlwind of emotions he didn't understand. He had kissed women before back home in his civilian life, but nothing had ever felt like that. It was as if her touch had awakened something deep within him, something he couldn't quite name. And her words, "Forgive me for what I'll do after." The mystery of it all gnawed at him. His attention snapped back to the task at hand as the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "All ships prepare for engagement. This is it, people. Fight for Earth. Fight for your families. We won't back down." Mark's grip tightened on the controls. His mission was clear: protect Earth's defenses, disable the enemy's weapons, and hold the line long enough for the reinforcements to arrive. But even as he focused on his objectives, the image of Elira lingered in his mind, distracting him. The massive alien warships emerged from the darkness of space, their immense forms blotting out the stars. Their sleek silver bodies gleamed with a deadly grace as they closed in on the human fleet. Mark's heart raced as his sensors lit up, showing the approaching threat. It was the moment of truth. "Enemy forces incoming. All fighters engage." Captain Reynolds' voice was sharp, commanding. Mark activated his thrusters, sending his ship rocketing into the heart of the battle. The dogfights began almost immediately as enemy fighters swarmed around them. Mark's hands flew over the controls, his training taking over as he fired his weapons at the oncoming enemies. Each shot was a dance of destruction, the explosion of alien ships lighting up the vast emptiness of space. Despite the overwhelming odds, there was something oddly familiar about the way his ship moved through the chaos. It felt like he had been here before, like he had done this 1,000 times. He fired another burst of laser fire, his target exploding in a burst of brilliant light. But the satisfaction of the kill was short-lived. The alien forces were relentless. "Stay focused, Mark." Captain Reynolds' voice broke through the noise. "We need to protect the capital ship. Don't let them get too close." Mark's fighters swooped in to intercept a group of enemy ships that were closing in on the flagship. His heart pounded in his chest as he engaged them, maneuvering through the enemy fire with precision. It was like a game of cat and mouse, and Mark was the mouse. He darted, weaved, and shot, taking down one alien fighter after another. But the enemy was adapting quickly. They were learning. "Enemy reinforcements detected," a voice from the ship's control room announced. "They're deploying larger vessels. We need backup now." Mark's stomach churned. The situation was growing worse by the second. The human fleet had already been battered, and now the aliens were sending in their most powerful ships. The odds were stacked against them. Mark gritted his teeth and pushed his fighter into a steep dive, narrowly avoiding a barrage of enemy fire. He had to keep going, keep fighting, no matter how impossible it seemed. In the midst of the chaos, Mark's comm system crackled to life with a message that made his blood run cold. It was a transmission from the enemy. "Humans, your time is running out," a cold voice said, unmistakably alien in tone. "Surrender now, and we may spare your lives. Resist, and we will destroy you all." Mark clenched his fists. There was no surrender, not now, not ever. His people had fought too hard, too long to give up now. He wasn't going to let the aliens win. He wasn't going to let them take everything. "Focus, everyone," Captain Reynolds shouted, her voice cutting through the battle raged on, each moment more intense than the last. Mark's hands gripped the controls of his fighter, his mind still a whirl of confusion and adrenaline. The alien warship, the one that had appeared out of nowhere, was now the central threat. Despite their best efforts, humanity's forces seemed to be losing ground. The alien ships were too powerful, their weapons too advanced. The human fleet was outnumbered and outgunned. Mark's fighter was moving in the thick of it, dodging enemy fire as he fought to protect Earth's last hope. His heart raced with every turn and every shot. But even in the chaos of the battle, one thought kept invading his mind: Elira. What was her true role in all of this? Why had she kissed him? Why had she whispered those words, "Forgive me for what I'll do after." The more he thought about her, the more the pieces didn't fit. She couldn't just be an enemy. There was something more to her, something beyond, the cold, distant warrior she appeared to be. But what was it? His fighter swerved to avoid another barrage of laser fire, and for a moment, Mark's thoughts were lost to the battle. The human fleet was struggling to hold its ground, and Mark's attention snapped back to the immediate danger. He fired a few shots at an incoming alien ship, watching as it exploded in a fiery burst. But even as the enemy vessel crumbled, Mark's thoughts returned to Elira. And then the unexpected happened. "Mark," came the crackling voice of Captain Reynolds over the comms. "You need to pull back. We've got a major problem." Mark's pulse quickened. "What's going on, Captain?" "The alien ship, the one we're all focused on, it's not just a warship. It's their command center. We need to neutralize it, or we're done for. We can't let them regroup." Mark nodded. "Understood, I'm on it." The call to action hit Mark like a jolt of electricity. The stakes had just been raised. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about defeating the heart of the alien force. If they didn't take down that command center, humanity would have no chance. Mark's fighter shot forward, cutting through the chaos as he headed straight for the massive alien vessel. He could see the huge warship looming ahead, its dark form dominating the battlefield. Its weapons were firing in all directions, annihilating anything in their path. Mark's mission was clear: get in, disable the ship's weapons, and get out. The fate of the entire fleet rested on his shoulders. He weaved in and out of enemy fire, his fighter barely avoiding the incoming blasts. Every second felt like an eternity. But despite the chaos around him, Mark's mind was still consumed with one thought: Elira. He couldn't understand why she was still on his mind, why he couldn't shake the feeling that she was somehow connected to all of this. "Mark!" Captain Reynolds' voice cut through the static, her tone urgent. "Don't get distracted, focus on the mission." He clenched his jaw and forced himself to push the thoughts of Elira aside. This wasn't the time to dwell on her. He had a job to do. The command center warship was now directly in front of him, its weapons locked onto him. Mark's fighter took a hit, the ship shuddering violently as the shields absorbed the blast. He gritted his teeth and pushed through the pain. His target was ahead. He could see the weak spot in the ship's armor, the place where he could strike and disable the main weapon systems. This was his chance. With a quick maneuver, Mark lined up his shot and fired. The blast hit the weak spot dead center, and the alien ship shook as its shields flickered. But just as he thought he had done it, something strange happened. The entire alien ship seemed to flicker, its form shifting for a brief moment. Mark's eyes widened in disbelief. What was going on? Was it a trick? Had the ship been prepared for something like this? And then, to his horror, the truth became clear. The alien warship was no ordinary vessel. It wasn't just a ship, it was a trap. The moment Mark's shot hit the weak spot, the ship's entire system seemed to come online in a way that Mark hadn't expected. The flicker he had seen wasn't an error, it was a signal that activated something much darker. Mark. Captain Reynolds' voice came through again, but this time it was full of panic. Get out of there. Now. But it was too late. The alien ship opened fire with an intensity that Mark had never seen before. The blast was so powerful that it knocked his fighter off course, sending him spiraling into the darkness of space. Mark struggled to regain control, but the ship's systems were failing. Warning lights flashed in front of him and alarms blared in his ears. As Mark fought to stabilize his ship, a new transmission came through. It was a voice he recognized, but it was one he never thought he'd hear in this context. Mark. The voice was soft, almost a whisper. It sent a shiver down his spine. I knew you would come for me. It was Illyra. She was on the comm, her voice calm but heavy with emotion. Illyra? Mark's voice was hoarse, filled with disbelief. What is happening? What did you do? There was a long pause before Illyra responded. I never wanted this. Mark, you have to understand, I never wanted any of this. Her words sent a wave of confusion through Mark. What do you mean? This is your war. You're the one who kissed me, who... I know. Illyra interrupted, her voice now shaking. And I'm sorry. But you were never supposed to find out. My mission was never to kill you. It was always to destroy Earth. And that was before I met you. Before I felt... She hesitated and Mark's heart skipped a beat. Before she felt what? I'm not the person you think I am, she continued. I was sent here to end your people. I've been loyal to my people for so long, but when I kissed you, I knew it would be too late to turn back. Mark's mind was racing. This couldn't be true. He couldn't believe it. Illyra, the woman he had trusted, the one who had made him feel things he didn't understand, was the enemy. She had lied to him, used him. But even as the reality of it hit him, Mark couldn't help but feel a deep sadness. He had seen something in her, something different from the cold warrior she appeared to be. He had believed that there was more to her than the enemy soldier, and now it was all falling apart. Illyra, Mark said, his voice steady but broken. I don't understand. Why did you do this? Why did you kiss me? Why didn't you just kill me when you had the chance? Her response was soft, almost too soft, to hear over the comms. Because I never wanted to kill you, Mark. I wanted to protect you, but I couldn't protect you from what I was sent to do. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Mark's mind was spinning. The truth was too much to process. He didn't know what to feel anymore. Betrayal, confusion, heartbreak, all these emotions collided within him. And yet, even in the midst of everything, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this. More to Illyra's story than she was letting on. Where are you? Mark demanded, his voice firm despite the chaos around him. Where are you now? There was a long pause, and when Illyra spoke again, her voice was filled with a strange mixture of regret and determination. I'm sorry, Mark, she said, the words laced with sorrow. I have to stop you. You'll never understand, but I have. To finish what I started. The transmission cut off, and Mark was left alone in the void of space. His heart was heavy with a sense of betrayal, and yet a part of him still couldn't let go of the connection he had felt with Illyra. The war was spiraling into chaos. The human fleet was broken, retreating in every direction. Ships that had once stood tall against the alien threat now drifted in space, heavily damaged and vulnerable. The battle, once a glimmer of hope for humanity's survival, had become a desperate fight for escape. Every decision, every move felt like it might be their last. Mark sat in the cockpit of his fighter, hands shaking as he gripped the controls. His thoughts were a blur, the familiar hum of the ship a faint background noise compared to the storm of emotions raging inside him. Illyra's words echoed in his mind. Her confession. I never wanted to kill you. Mark wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that there was still hope for her, that there was something deeper in her than the enemy he had been taught to fear. But the truth was clear now. She had been sent to destroy Earth, to end everything he had fought for. You'll never understand, but I have to finish what I started. He couldn't understand. How could he? How could she betray everything they had shared? The kiss, the promise of something more, the connection that had sparked between them. It was all part of the lie, part of the mission, part of her betrayal. Mark, pull it together. Captain Reynolds' voice broke through his thoughts. We can still fight this. We need to regroup with the rest of the fleet and strategize. We're not out yet. Mark nodded, though he wasn't sure if he could still hear her through the fog in his mind. He glanced at his damaged ship. The alien warship was still in the distance, its dark form looming over the battlefield. Its weapons were relentless, firing with precision, tearing through the remaining human ships. The odds were still against them, but Mark knew one thing for sure. If they didn't fight back now, humanity would be finished. Understood, Mark said through the comms. He steeled himself and dove into the heart of the battle once again, his fighter weaving in and out of enemy fire. The warship was powerful, but it wasn't invincible. Mark couldn't afford to lose focus. He couldn't let Illyra's betrayal be the end of him. He had to finish the mission, no matter what. As he pushed his fighter forward, a wave of memories hit him. The first time he had seen Illyra standing alone in the quiet hallway of the ship. The strange connection, the battle was far from over. The chaos of war raged in every direction, and Mark found himself caught in the storm of it all. His ship shuddered under another blast from the alien warship, its massive form looming ahead. The human fleet was in full retreat, but it didn't matter. Mark couldn't stop now. There was no turning back. But there was something else on his mind. Something he couldn't escape. Illyra. Her words, her actions, her betrayal. She had confessed that she never wanted to hurt him, that she was forced to follow orders. She had chosen her people, her empire, over him. And yet, despite everything, Mark couldn't completely abandon the feelings that had taken root in him. Her kiss, the moments they had shared, all of it felt so real. How could he just turn his back on that? His hands gripped the controls tightly, and he steered his fighter toward the enemy ship. The warship had become the symbol of everything that was wrong in this war. It wasn't just a military target anymore. It had become personal. Illyra's presence on the battlefield, fighting against him, made it impossible to ignore the truth. Mark, fall back. Captain Reynolds' voice crackled over the comms, urgent. We need to regroup. This isn't working. Mark knew she was right. The alien warship was too powerful, and their chances of victory were slim at best. But he couldn't let this go. He couldn't give up, not when he had been so close to ending it all. His mind raced as he struggled to understand what to do. He had been given a choice, fight or surrender. But it wasn't just about the war anymore. It was about Illyra. His mind flashed back to their first meeting, her mysterious presence standing in the shadows, the strange feeling that had washed over him. He had been drawn to her, as if she held the answers to questions he hadn't even known he had. When she had kissed him, everything had felt so real. She had felt real. But now he realized that her loyalty wasn't to him. It was to her people, her empire. Mark shook his head, trying to shake off the memories. He had a mission to complete. He couldn't let his emotions cloud his judgment any longer. He couldn't let Illyra's betrayal be the thing that ended him, ended humanity. Mark. Captain Reynolds' voice was sharp, breaking through his thoughts. Focus. We need you to fall back. We're losing too many ships. But Mark didn't listen. Instead, he pushed his fighter forward, deeper into the heart of the battle. The human fleet was in disarray, retreating from the overwhelming power of the alien forces. But Mark was determined to make one last attempt. He couldn't go down without a fight. As he closed in on the alien warship, he saw something that made his heart stop. Elira's fighter was positioned directly in front of the warship, leading a strike against the human ships. She was there, in the middle of the chaos, fighting for the enemy. It was like a punch to the gut. How could she do this? How could she betray him like this? The pain of it hit him harder than any enemy fire could. But even as his heart ached with betrayal, another part of him couldn't help but feel a deep sadness. Elira wasn't just an enemy. She was a part of this war, a soldier following orders, just as he was. She had made her choice, and Mark had to make his. His hands tightened on the controls as he aimed his ship at the alien warship. He had to stop this, for humanity, for Earth. It didn't matter what Elira's role was anymore. The war had to end, and he was the one who had to make sure it happened. The battle raged on around him, the space between the two fleets becoming a deadly arena. Mark's fighter weaved through enemy fire, dodging blasts as he closed in on his target. The alien warship's defenses were strong, but he had seen the weak points. He had studied the ship's design. He had one shot. He had to make it count. The moment came. Mark fired. The explosion lit up the darkness of space, a burst of light as his shot struck the alien warship's weak spot. For a brief moment, everything seemed to hold still. And then the warship shuddered, its shields flickering. Mark's heart raced. Had he done it? But before he could celebrate, another blast hit his ship. His fighter was rocked, the controls slipping from his hands. He tried to steady it, but the damage was too severe. Sparks flew, and alarms blared. His ship was failing. But even as he struggled to regain control, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just the warship that was falling apart. It was his world. "Mark!" Captain Reynolds' voice screamed over the comms. "Get out of there now. You're too close to the explosion." But Mark couldn't hear her. He was too focused on the sight in front of him. Elira's fighter was still in the distance, her ship locked in the midst of the battle. She hadn't retreated. She was still fighting. He had to make a choice. The mission. His duty. Or her. "Elira!" Mark shouted, his voice raw with emotion. "Please, this doesn't have to be the end." The transmission crackled, and for a moment, Mark thought he had lost contact. But then Elira's voice came through, soft and pained. "I can't stop, Mark. You don't understand. My people will never let me go. They will never let us be together." Mark's heart twisted. He had known this was coming, but hearing her say it, hearing the pain in her voice, made it all too real. She had chosen her people. She had chosen the war. And now there was nothing left for them. No future. No hope. Nothing but the destruction of everything they had built together. "You don't have to do this," Mark said, his voice trembling. "You don't have to follow them. You can leave. We can run. Together." But Elira's response was filled with sorrow. "I can't, Mark. I can't turn my back on them. And you have to stop me. It's the only way." The transmission cut off, leaving Mark in silence. His fighter was barely holding together. The warship had taken another shot, and his controls were failing. But his mind was elsewhere. He had made a choice. He had to end this. The war. The pain. Elira's sacrifice. He turned his fighter away from the exploding warship, heading back toward the retreating human fleet. His mission was over. He had failed. The war was far from won, but at least he had one thing, Elira's final words. Her plea. "You have to stop me," she had said. But Mark couldn't stop her. He couldn't stop the war. He could only keep fighting. And maybe, just maybe, there would be a chance for redemption. For both of them. As he returned to the fleet, the remnants of the battle still burning around him, Mark couldn't help but wonder what the future would hold. The war was far from over. Elira was still out there on the other side. And in the end, they both had made choices they couldn't take back. But Mark wasn't done yet. He had one last mission, one last chance to make a difference. And no matter what happened, he would continue fighting. The silence of space was deafening. Mark's hands gripped the controls of his battered fighter as he carefully maneuvered it through the dark void. The distant stars twinkled coldly, indifferent to the turmoil and devastation unfolding just beyond them. The battle was over for now, but the war was far from finished. The human fleet was in retreat, limping back to the few safe zones that remained. But Mark wasn't thinking about the retreat. He wasn't thinking about the war. He was thinking about her daughter Lyra. Her face, her voice, her kiss. Everything about her seemed to haunt him, like a shadow he couldn't escape. She was on the other side now, fighting for her empire, and he was fighting for Earth. But even as the distance between them grew, even as their paths diverged further, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that their stories were far from over. Mark's fighter jolted as it hit a patch of debris. The human fleet was scattered across the sector, some ships damaged beyond repair, others still operational but barely able to fight. The alien forces had taken a significant toll, and the warship that had once been their greatest threat now lay in ruins. Yet the sense of victory was hollow. The fight wasn't finished. It never felt finished. He punched in the coordinates for the command ship, the one place he knew he could find answers. His mission was to report to Captain Reynolds, to regroup, to strategize. The human fleet had to recover. They had to rebuild. But his heart wasn't in it. It never had been. Not since the moment Lyra had said goodbye. As he entered the ship's hangar, Mark could hear the distant hum of machinery, the buzz of activity as the fleet prepared for the next step. The crew was working tirelessly, but Mark couldn't focus on the work. His mind was elsewhere, on the one thing that had always weighed heavily on him, Lyra. The moment he disembarked from his fighter, Captain Reynolds was there, her face stern, as always, but her eyes were filled with worry. "Mark, what happened out there?" she asked, her voice hard but caring. "We were losing ships fast. You should have retreated with the others." "I couldn't," Mark replied, his voice steady. But the weight of it all pressed on him. "There was no way I could leave." Captain Reynolds studied him for a moment, her eyes narrowing as if she understood the real reason. "You're not the only one who's lost someone, Mark. We all have. But this is a war. We don't have the luxury of personal connections. The mission comes first." Mark didn't respond. The mission? He had followed it for so long, and where had it gotten him? He had lost everything. Lyra had become the very thing she was meant to destroy, and now they were on opposite sides of the galaxy. But even as the captain spoke, Mark could feel the knot in his chest. He wasn't sure he could just move on from this as if nothing had happened. As if they had never shared that moment, that connection. "I know," Mark said finally. "But some battles aren't just fought on the front lines. Some battles are